Yes, well, the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, is really, really true in the spread of disease and preventing the spread of disease. We take this schematic diagram, for example. Imagine these red dots are different people, and say the first one has a cold, say it's you, and you give your cold to two other people. You sneeze on them or shake hands with them or whatever, and they each go on to give that same cold to two more people, and so on and so on. This number of new cases produced per existing case, we refer to that as the reproductive ratio of disease. It's a really important factor in disease spreading through a population, whether it's a population of animals or people, or these could be farms, spreading from one farm to two other farms. That's a really important concept, that disease is inherently exponentially spread. It's really important that producers and farm workers understand that. Now in this example, we've used it as consistently 2 new cases per existing case. In reality, of course, as this next slide shows, it'll vary. Might be two new cases for one person and 4 new cases from another person and so on. It can vary, but the average number going through population is important. Sometimes, as this next slide shows, you can have a really influential hub or person. Imagine this is a sales yard where animals are coming in and groups are being subdivided and then going out to many, many farms. That hub has really spread the disease. In the case of foot and mouth disease in the United Kingdom in 2001, this is what was happening. Sheep were coming in, being subdivided into groups, going to many farms, even cycling back, as this dotted line shows, through the sales yard, spreading even more. Now, a hub could be a physical premises, such as a sales yard, but it could also be a function, like, say, a given feed company does not practice good biosecurity, and their truck is spreading it from one farm to many other farms. So this just shows how disease can spread exponentially. Now, another concept that's really important in the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure is illustrating these 4 different situations, A through D. At the top there, imagine the first dot to the left there, there's his interaction with the next farm to the right, such that there's a 100% probability of their spread from one farm to that farm. And then from the second to third farm, interaction is such that there's also 100% probability of spread, and so on. So even though the first and the fourth farms are not directly connected, because there's a 100% chance of spread along each step, there is a 100% chance of it spreading from the first to the fourth eventually. So now let's say they implement some biosecurity, not put a little effort into it, wash the boots now and then or something like that. So they're reducing it to 90% chance of spread at each step. Well, it's pretty likely it will spread from first to second, but to get along the whole route, it's 90% of 90% of 90%, or 0.9 times 0.9 times 0.9. So even with a small effort, they've actually reduced the spread of it, chance of it getting to the fourth premises to 73%. Say they put more effort, a really concentrated effort, not perfect, reduce it to 20% chance of moving from each step. Well, 20% of 20% of 20% is actually less than 1%. It's 0.8%. So with less than perfect, but a concentrated effort, this outbreak is much smaller. It might get from the first to the second, maybe to the third, but the chances of getting to the fourth, chance of it being a huge outbreak, is greatly reduced because of the biosecurity steps they have taken along the way. Now, another concept is it doesn't have to be equal. I mean, it'd be nice if life were fair and everyone did their fair share, but even if one person isn't trying that hard, another person's trying really hard, and so on, it's the combination that matters, and you can have a significant impact of reducing spread from farm to farm. So when you put this back in this sort of tree, if you will, of exponential spread, it's really important to realize that even though spread's inherently exponential, the impact of control has exponential benefits. Because if you prevent the spread from this first one to the second one, you're not just protecting the second one. Because it didn't get to that second one, it can't spread to the other ones. So you've blocked a whole branch of spread. That's a huge impact. These guys down here will never know that they didn't get disease because you had good practice up here, but it has real value for the industry at the population level. And that's what's really important for people to understand. So what are some of the things that impact or influence the likelihood of spread at each step? So things like the duration, how long is an animal or a group of animals infectious? You know, when you have a cold, you become ill and you're infectious. You're shedding the virus. You can infect other people for a certain period, but then you get over it. And you may not be feeling 100% yet again, but you're not shedding the virus. You're no longer infectious. Well, it's exactly the same for animals. They get sick. They have an immune response, fight off the disease just like you and I do. They get better. They're no longer infectious most of the time. So, you know, you often hear public health officials say, well, when you're sick, stay home. Don't go to work. You won't be spreading it to your colleagues. Well, this applies on the veterinary side too. You know, getting an early diagnosis. It's really important to call your veterinarian when your animals are sick, get a lab diagnosis, have surveillance so we detect disease early so we can make sure we aren't spreading it. We can remove infected animals. You could have a sick pen and put animals you believe to be infected in the sick pen and segregate them so they're not available as infectious animals, individuals to infect the rest of the herd. In an outbreak of a foreign animal disease, such as foot and mouth disease, we're very aggressive. We even depopulate entire herds or even preemptively slaughter high-risk herds, herds that have been exposed to known infected animals and aren't yet sick, but we're worried they're incubating the disease and will be shedding the virus shortly. Those are examples of decreasing the time available or the period while they're infectious. So while they're infectious, what else can you do? Well, you can reduce the contact frequency during that period that they're shedding the virus. You know, in human terms, maybe you have to go to work, you can't stay home for whatever reason, but you can avoid meetings, reduce the number of contacts you have during that period. On the livestock side, you know, avoid all unnecessary livestock and equipment movements on and off your farm. Only have that's absolutely essential all the time. Have really good farm premises security, locked gates, locked doors. Design your system, your setup so you know, the feed guy doesn't have to go anywhere near the actual animals. You have a separate clean driveway versus the one where the manure is, that kind of thing. Having, in an outbreak, we put on more severe restrictions, quarantines, control movement zones. So we're restricting movement to reduce the frequency of contact of infectious animals. Another thing then is if you can't avoid contact, you can reduce the probability of transmission per contact. So, you know, somebody has to come onto your farm. It's essential, but what can you do to reduce the probability of that contact spreading disease? And that's where we talk about in human terms, you know, wash your hands, don't shake hands or kiss when you have a cold. In animal terms, you know, be really careful about wearing clean coveralls, washing your boots, cleaning and disinfecting equipment, even have shower in, shower out premises. That's sort of the classic traditional things we think of in biosecurity, but you really need it along the whole pathway of spread. The last one then is reducing the susceptibility of the herd, and we do that through immunity. You know, you may sneeze on someone, you have a cold, and the other person already had that cold, so they're immune to it. They would have otherwise got sick, but they're naturally immune because they already had the cold and they've built antibodies. Or maybe it's something that there are commercial vaccines available, and that's why it's so important to have your vaccine practices for endemic diseases up to snap, so you have as high of immunity as you can in your herd, so that if through these other steps it gets there, your animals aren't susceptible. So that's the combination of things we see that producers can do, workers can do to prevent the spread. Now, it's really important to realize this is important all the time. You don't wait to implement this when you hear in the news there's an outbreak of a foreign animal disease. You need to be doing this all the time. You notice there's nothing in here about this is only true for foot and mouth versus common disease. It's true for all infectious contagious diseases. It's true before you even know you have it. The virus and the bacteria, you know, they're not reading the quarantine form that government officials place on your farm. They only pay attention to the physical barriers you put in place as a producer and your staff, your workers put in place every day. That's what matters. That's what you need to do in terms of this ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, literally exponentially.